Hello guys, welcome back to my channel, The Beautiful Stitches. I love you all and I'm glad you're here with me. Today we are going to be making a simple top, or I call it a jacket. Here are my fabrics. As you can see, my fabrics are in pieces. I used it for another project and I want to use the remaining one for this jacket. Okay, so you can see I have my fabric and another material I'll use to combine the both of them. That is why it's not good for you to throw your pieces away, or will I say your remnants away, because you can use it for another project. As you can see, my fabrics are in different pieces. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, here is my fabric. I've placed it on fold and I've cut out the front and the back panel. Okay, so I'll be drafting my measurement on my fabric that is placed right before us here. Okay, so let's input our measurement on our fabric. Before we continue, we are going to input our baseline. Remember, my fabric is in pieces, so I will be economizing my fabric, so I'm marking out 1/2 inch for our baseline, and then this is the front pattern, and I'll be placing the zip in front, so I'm marking out my zippers. So I'm marking out 2 inches from the shoulder down to the half length. Okay, so let's fold it. I'll be folding it downward because I'll be cutting both the front and the back panel together. Okay, so I'll be folding the zipper allowance inward, just the way I'm doing it. That is for the front panel. Okay, so let's mark out our measurements. Okay, from my shoulder to my under bust is 13 inches. Okay, and then I'll be adding 1/2 inch to join it with the band. This top is going to have a band. Okay, so I'm adding 1/2 inch to connect it with the band, and my neck measurement is 3 inches for the neck width and 7.5 inches for the shoulder, plus 1/2 inch seam allowance. So let's create our shoulder slope, come down by 1 inch and then connect down to the neck width, just the way I'm doing it. Okay, let's input our armhole measurement. My armhole is 15 and we have 7.5. 15 divided by 2 have 7.5, just like as I'm marking it out. So I'll draw it out into a straight line down to the center front, just the way I'm doing it, as you can see. So the next thing is to connect the line from the armhole down to the other line we drew earlier. So let's carve out the armhole. Locate the midpoint. 7.5 divided by 2, we have 3.338. Okay, so go in by 1/2 inch for the front armhole. We go in by 1/2 inch and then connect it down to the shoulder line with our armhole curve and back to the upper bust line, just the way I'm doing it. If you're following my tutorials, this pattern drafting should be familiar to us. Okay, remember the front armhole is deeper than the back armhole. This is what we are doing here right now. So we'll connect and draw out the front armhole. As you can see, for the back armhole, we connect directly from the midpoint down to the upper bust line, just like as I'm doing it. Okay, all right, you can see this is our front armhole and the other one is our back armhole. So what we're going to do now is to input our bust measurement. My bust is 34. 34 divided by 4, I have 8.5 inches. Okay, so I'll be adding 1.5 inches, half inch for ease and 1 inch for sewing allowance. Okay, just the way I'm marking it out, as you can see. And then at the waist, sorry, the under bust line, okay, let's draw it out into a straight line so that we can make our markings clearer. Okay, so at the under bust we have 31, and 31 divided by 4, I have 7/3. Okay, then I'll be adding 1 inch for that, then 1.5 inches for seam and ease, for seam allowance and ease. Okay, just like as I added at the upper bust line. So let's connect our markings together. So we'll connect from the upper bust down to the under bust. Okay, so before I mark out my dart placement, I'll have to cut out the lower part of this fabric. I want to mark out my dart point so that when I start joining it, I'll not start measuring my dart placement again. Okay, so my dart is 7 inches. That is our nipple to nipple divided by 2, have 3.5 inches. Okay, so let me cut out the remaining part of this fabric and then make a notch at the dart point. Sorry, my scissors is not sharp. Let me use a sharper one to cut it off. Okay, remove the part that is not useful. Okay, so I'm going to make a notch at the dart point. While joining my fabric is just to measure out my dart length and then continue my joining. Okay, at this point we're going to impute our half inch sewing allowance at the shoulder line. From the shoulder line we're imputing half inch sewing allowance. Okay, just like as I've done. And then for the neck depth, we'll be using 4 inches for the neck depth, and then we'll connect it down to the 3 inches standard neck measurement. Okay, I want it to be 4 by 3 inches. Okay, and then for the back neckline we're coming down by 1 inch and connect it also down to the 3 inches standard neck width measurement. All right, so we are going to be cutting it out. Remember, we cut the back neckline and the back armhole first before cutting out the front armhole and the front neck line, just the way I have done. Okay, so we remove the fabric and place only the front panel and cut out the front armhole and the front neck line. As you can see, I've done that. I've cut it out. So this is the front pattern. We're going to be slashing the center front open because at the center front we'll be imputing a zipper. Okay, sorry, a button. I'll be using button for this top. Sorry, I mentioned zipper earlier. It's button I'm using. Okay, so this is the front panel and the other one is the back panel. Let me keep them aside. Remember, our top is going to be having a band, a 2 inches band. So this is the fabric I'll be using, mirror face. I'll be using it to make out my band. So I'm placing the front panel to mark it out. I'm using this one to mark it out so that I can cut out my band. Okay, I think the length is okay. Now is to measure out the width of our band. Remember, it's a 2 inches band. Okay, we are connecting it to the half, connecting it to make up the half length of our top. Okay, so I'm marking out 2.5 inches. I'll be using 1/4 inch to join it with the upper one that ends at the under bust, and connecting with the lower part where I'll be imputing my gathers. Okay, so here is my band. I've cut out this one, so I'll be using this same fabric to cut out another band for the back panel. Remember, this is for the front panel. I'll cut out the same length and the same width for the back panel. Okay, here are my bands for the front and for the back panel. All I'm going to do later is to give it a good press and impute my interface to keep it in position. Let me keep it aside. Okay, here is the remaining fabric I'll be using for the lower part of this top. Remember, it's going to be having a gathers at the lower part, and these gathers will be going round the waist. Okay, so let's align our fabric, making sure the edges are equal and in order. Okay, all right, so let me mark out the length of our top. Remember, the full length of our top is 22. Okay, and then I'll be adding my band and the remaining part of the remaining part of the length is going to be used for the gathers. Okay, so I have 22 here, and I'll be adding 2 inches, sorry, I'll be adding ½ inch to join it with the upper part. Okay, so I'll be marking out 22.5. Okay, so what I have is 11 inches. After subtracting the full length from the half length, I have 11 inches left to join with the upper part. Okay, so I'm marking 11 inches across the length of this fabric, and then I'll connect the points together with my ruler, just the way I'm doing it now. Okay, so let's cut out this fabric. Okay, here is another fabric mirror face. I'll be using it at the center back of these gathers. Okay, and I've also cut it out the same length with the other fabric I'll be joining with it. Okay, with the main fabric. So I'll be joining it at the center back of these gathers. All right, so this is the upper part of our fabric. I'll be using this to cut out the lining. Okay, here we are going to be cutting out the sleeve of this top. Okay, remember, the sleeve is a very small one. Okay, for tutorials on how to draft a perfect sleeve, visit my channel. I have a complete video on how to draft a perfect sleeve. Okay, so let's mark out the length of our sleeve. Remember, this is a very small sleeve, so I'll be using 6 inches for the length of my sleeve. Okay, so let's mark out 6 inches, and the cap's height is 3.5 inches. Let's draw it out into a straight line. Okay, so my armhole is 7.5, okay, plus 1 inch seam allowance. I'll be measuring out 8.5 inches. And then I'll connect it down to the center of the fabric. Remember, for your basic sleeve pattern drafting, visit my channel, The Beautiful Stitches. I have a complete video on pattern drafting for a perfect sleeve, okay, just the way I'm doing it. So we connect it down that way, and then beneath this curve we make another curve, and also curve again downward towards the open end of the sleeve, just the way I'm doing it. And then we'll connect the lines together. My round sleeve is 7, that is 14 divided by 2. I have 7 inches plus 1 inch seam allowance, so I'm marking out 8 inches, and then I'll connect it this way. Okay, so let's cut it out. Remember, this fabric is unfolded. The both sleeves are there, so I'll be cutting out the front armhole. Remember, the front armhole is deeper than the back armhole, so I'm cutting out the front armhole now, just the way I'm doing it. As you can see, we cut gently. Remember, the two sleeves are there, wrong side facing each other. That's why I'm right side facing each other. That's why I'm cutting the both of them at once. Okay, so I will make a notch at the center to enable me join it properly at the center of the armhole. Okay, so look at the both sleeves. All right, so this is the end of our tutorial. See you in the joining of this fabric.